Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Middle Georgia State University's 2017 Cyber Conference. And oh yes, by the way, happy Valentine's Day. I'm so happy to see so many people wearing red. So I'd like to wish a warm welcome to everybody for being here, but more importantly, I would like to congratulate you for being here, both those of you that are in the room with us here and those of you that are streaming. I mentioned the streaming. It's important because we've got a wide audience out and about today that are watching, and because of that, we're going to stick very strictly to our schedule. So we're going to do our absolute best to keep our great speakers on time, but also to start each session on time, so those of you that are watching us through the streaming service know when and where to connect for each of our great speakers. But we have a jam-packed schedule today with some of the best speakers in the field. And I really want to congratulate all of you for choosing to invest in your education today. I cannot think of a single issue that's more important to our nation and to our organizations than what we're going to speak about today. And so I really congratulate you for being here. It's a very, very important topic and something that will serve you very well by being here. And I think I can say, I know I can say with great confidence that there are very few leaders across the country who are not thinking about this issue every single day. This is the issue that keeps CEOs up at night, that keeps government leaders up at night, that keeps administrators of all sorts of organizations up at night. What's going to happen tomorrow to my organization? So by you being here, you can be involved in this debate and you can learn and help your organization. Before I introduce our first speaker, I would like to thank a couple people. Of course, a conference like this doesn't happen on its own. It requires great leadership to pull these things off. And so I'd like to acknowledge a few people. And if you're in the room when I call your name, I'd ask you to stand. And first of all, our Dean, Dr. Alex Kohang. Is Alex here? Thank you very much, Alex. The program chair, Dr. Kevin Floyd. He's probably off chairing some program, I guess, okay. The conference chair, Dr. Scott Spangler. Scott in the room, or is he looking after some details? All right, thank you, Scott. Also, Chris of Ottawa from our Knowledge at Work team. I would be remiss if I did not mention the great support that Knowledge at Work has provided to this event and other events on our campus, I must say, but in particular this event. Thank you very much, Chris, for everything you do for the School of Information Technology. And there's a whole group, there's an army of people that have been involved in helping us. All those that are involved in the conference organization, I'd ask that you would stand up and please join me in thanking everybody who's been involved, including the great team in the booth at the back. So be sure today to visit our website, which is www.mga.edu/cyberconference 2017, all one word. And on that site, you will see detailed biographies, of all of our speakers. I will do a brief introduction, but if you want to learn much more about the great things that they've done in their careers, please take a look at that. And of course, there's also an up-to-date schedule there as well. One more important detail before we kick off. I would ask all of you to please turn off or at least mute your phones. I can see many of you on your phones already, but please mute them because it can be a real distraction if you don't do that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Philip Krager. He's a professor in the School of Engineering Technology at Dayton State College, which is designated as a National Center of Digital Forensics Academic Excellence by the Defense Cyber Crime Center Academic Cyber Curriculum Alliance. Now that is a mouthful, and we need to get an acronym for that, Philip. Okay. He's also served as the principal investigator of the National Science Foundation funded Advanced Cyber Forensic Education Consortium. And from 2004 to 2010, he served in a dual appointment at the University of Central Florida as the Assistant Director for Digital Evidence at the National Center for Forensic Science and as an Assistant Professor in the Department of Engineering Technology. Please join me in welcoming Philip.
Thank you for that warm introduction and welcome everybody here live and welcome streamers. We were told that to make sure we acknowledged you. I've been teaching cybersecurity and cyber forensics at various institutions starting around 2003. And during that time, looking back, looking in the news, looking on the web, occasionally you would see that some company, some corporation, some institution was the target of an attack. And nowadays, if you're following along with the news, you see something every day and sometimes multiple instances occurring, which is really good for us as cyber professionals and as students. And this morning in USA Today, in the technology section, there was a piece called "For Cybersecurity Pros, the Threat Level is at Code Red," which again is good for us. And so what I'm going to talk about today is, and I'm particularly targeting the students here, is the things you really need to know to be employable. And guess what? They're probably not the things that you think they are, okay? And I'm the first one up, and I hope this is the correct. There we go. Okay, students, please raise your hands. Okay, I've got some questions for you. What are your career goals? Just one person. What kind of job do you want to get? If you're in cybersecurity, anybody. I'm going to start picking on people. Penetration testing, good. And so you're a student here and you're taking courses that cover penetration testing, right? Okay, and once you get out, you're going to know everything and you're going to be employable, right? Okay, you hope to, good. Okay, so what are the kind of things you think you need to do to achieve them? You need to take the courses, you need to get some certifications and things of that nature. You need to be good technically, right? But that's only part of it. And that's what I'm going to get at today. It's only part of it. So really my talk is going to be about the more mundane things that you need to know, but it's the things that you need to have that may not be covered in your courses to make you employable. And so there's things that you're learning in your courses. You're good at intrusion detection. You're good at firewalls. You can do your forensics, and you still may not be the ideal employee. And so, as was mentioned earlier, I'm at Daytona State College, and we were designated as an NSA Center of Academic Excellence in Cyber Defense Education. And we're the only Florida State college that has that designation. The state college is really a glorified community college. We're a 2+2. And we also have the same thing for cyber forensics. So you would think that if we have these national designations, that our students are going to be employable if they learn those technology skills. And it's really not necessarily true. They know the technology, but the employers are looking for something else. Okay, going through this very quickly. So Middle Georgia has also been designated by the NSA as a Center of Academic Excellence. So you have some really good courses. It's very difficult to get this. And some of the things, some of the courses you have to have, according to the NSA, have to cover all of these areas, right? That's the first 2 years. In the second 2 years, if you're a four-year institution, you also have to cover these areas. And so you really should thank the people here in Middle Georgia, Dr. Kevin Floyd and his team, who went through and made sure that your courses aligned to all of these knowledge, skills, and abilities. It's very difficult to do. There's a lot of schools that get turned down. Okay, so here's the big but. You get A's in all your courses. You know all these technical things. And let me just ask you, students, once again, what do you think is one thing that employers are looking for that is crucial that's probably not covered in any of those technical courses? Yes, in orange. Integrity, that's good. Okay, it's good to have integrity. Yes? Certifications, that's a good one too. Anybody else? One more. The ability, oh, you hit on it. Good. Let's talk a little bit more about that in a second. The ability to communicate. Why do I need to communicate? Well, if you think about it, when we're learning all of these technical things, there's a language, right? And you start out not knowing the language, but you keep taking additional courses, you learn the technical terms, and you gain technical knowledge, and your skills improve, but it's almost like a foreign language. This may not mean anything to you, but maybe there's some people in here who aren't technical. Have you ever spoken to somebody who has a real in-depth technical knowledge of computers, and you think, oh my God, I have no clue what they just said? And you probably felt that way again. Okay, well, in terms of, let me just stick with communication just for a second. If you're going into a company, you're going to have to be working with peers who may be as technically sophisticated as you and speak the same language, but you're also dealing with others who don't have that technical sophistication. Management, customers, all different types of people. Communication is going to be important. It's crucial. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But here's some of the things which you're never really taught. It's almost like it's something you're born with or something that's just driven by you that you don't really learn in school. And I see students all the time who either have these or don't have these. For example, being self-directed, motivated, self-starter. They don't really teach you that. There's about 25% of my students, and I know when they do this, is they have 2 or 3 weeks to do an assignment. They're usually very technical, and take about 2 or 3 weeks to complete, and they start the day before. And when they turn in their assignment, you know what? I look at it and I can tell. And in my mind, that tells me something about that person, and I have a mindset about that person. And then from then on, every time I see that student's work, I'm thinking, here's the guy or here's the gal who's starting at the last second. And guess what? I'm not going to write you a letter of reference for employment, nor for graduate school. You need to be thinking about these things. Simple things, professionalism, being on time, dressing appropriately. At Daytona, that's in Florida, you're going to see some people coming to work in shorts or with flip-flops. That's not appropriate dress, okay? Did you learn anything about that in your cyber courses? That's not a rhetorical question, did you? No, you don't. Good communication skills. What does that mean? You can speak English. No, it means that you're going to be speaking with various audiences. What do I mean by audiences? Well, like I said, you've got your peers. Now, I can talk with Gary very technically, and we can talk, we can talk the talk, we can walk the walk. But then if I wanted to speak with somebody else that's outside, they want to know something about their computer, that's a totally different audience. So what do you have to do? You have to get in the mindset of that person and say, I need to communicate something that's extremely technical, bring that down so the other person understands. Because if you think about it, in management, people go into management usually because what? They're not good at computers. That's what I say. And occasionally you have somebody who is technically sophisticated and they work their way up to management. That's actually the best kind of manager, as long as they have those management skills. Problem solving and analytical skills. This is one thing I see in students, is that they want to be told how to solve a problem and duplicate it. For example, my program is online, so I have demonstrations of how to do these things. Forensics analysis, here's how I would do it. Now, if I give them the exact same problem and they just duplicate it, what did they learn? Nothing. It's monkey, monkey see, monkey do. In real life, when you're going out, every day, you're going to see a different problem. And then another and another. And it's always changing because technology is changing. And so you have to be able to understand how to think critically to solve all different kinds of problems. And I just had a student last semester really ding me on my evaluation. I had super high evaluations except for one student that said, he didn't teach me how to do this. I said, well, I didn't teach you how to do it ABC, but you did have the knowledge there and you had to put everything together in order to solve the problem and to communicate it back to me. Love of continued learning. How much has technology changed in the last year, in the last 5 years, in the last 10 years? You can't be stagnant. You have to continue to learn. That doesn't mean going back and taking more courses. In fact, most of the technical stuff that I've learned, I've taught myself. But that means sitting down, spending some time and going through and looking at problems and actually duplicating them, spending time away from my family in order to do these things. Because there's no way you're going to be successful in technology if your mind is stagnant and you don't continue to learn. Technology changes constantly. How do we get here? Experiential learning. Learning through experiences versus procedural learning. Procedural learning is, here's how to solve this step A, B, and C. Now, if all you can do is follow rote memorization of a series of steps, what kind of job do you think you're going to get? How far do you think you're going to get up the hierarchy in an organization? Not very far. You know how they do these things with customer service now? When you call in and they have this big book, and it's almost like it's a logic tree, and they ask you a question, you answer, and they flip to this page, and then you answer another question, they have to flip back in order to solve your problem. That's procedural. You're following a process that's predetermined. People in customers love people in customer service, but they're not going to be the highest wage earners. The people who are going to be the highest wage earners are going to have some critical thinking skills and are able to problem solve things that they've never seen before. Learning by doing. I tell my students, there's just no way. I teach a class in Linux administration, and I show them the demonstrations. Here's how you do this. And what I tell them is my video lecture's playing, follow along with me. And then stop and continue practicing for an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours. There's no way you're going to learn unless you do and also fail. You know, failing is good. And actually, if you're going to be failing, the best place to fail is in a class. So you may get a B instead of an A or a C instead of a B, but it's not like being on the job where if you fail, you may lose your job. Huge difference. So I tell my students, don't be afraid to try, don't be afraid to do, don't be afraid to fail. And persevering through the failure. And then, of course, learning by succeeding. But if you think about it, if you do everything right the first time in a course, what did you learn? Did you learn anything? Isn't it nice? I'm not dinging all the professors here, but when you get feedback from a professor and they say, okay, well, you know, you did this, but you really should have done that, instead of just giving a grade of 82. If they give you a grade of 82, what did you learn? I missed something. I don't know what I missed. I don't know how to fix what I missed. And that's for your professors, is make sure that you do provide feedback, because that's a part of the learning process, not just your lectures. And of course, that takes a lot of time, but it's something you have to set aside for. Real world and the classroom. The real world is nothing like the classroom. The students, do any of you work? Okay. It's something that's getting through to you? Have you had problems communicating sometimes? If somebody asks you a question and you tell them the answer and they say, I don't know what that means. Okay, that's good. Okay, so how I teach my courses. I don't know how the professors here teach their courses, but on almost every assignment, there is a writing component. And so essentially, if you have 4 or 5 assignments, not only are you doing the technical things that are required to solve the problem, but you're writing 4 to 5 papers that are 10 to 15 pages long. And so let me give you an example of that. So in my network forensics and intrusion response course, for their final, I give them a virtual machine, which is a server which has several accounts on it. And there's a story that I made up. And so these accounts, there's people doing things all day long, and there's lots of things involved. There's an administrator and there's some programmers. And so it's kind of quasi-realistic. I always try to make my assignments realistic so that students can kind of get into the story, because we learn through stories. It's very important that you do that. And also it's more fun. If I just tell you A, B, and C, no, I set it up to say, okay, is that we have this scenario, you're the person, and always consider that when you're doing this and writing up your paper, that you're being paid $350 an hour to try to increase the quality of their work. And so there's various forms of intrusion and backdoors involved. And then they have a deliverable. The first thing they do, and the hardest thing that they have to do, is to write a 1-paragraph management summary. And so they're working 40 hours on this, and they have 15 pages that kind of explains what they did in a technical language. Then they have to distill that into a single paragraph. Is that difficult to do? Let me ask you this, students. Do you have to do that in your courses? You do? Good. Okay. Is it difficult? I'm not seeing shaking of heads or nodding or anything. Live stream people, chime in. It's very difficult to do, because I tell them, okay, you've done all these technical things. Here are the terms you cannot use in your assignments: IP address, TCP, port numbers, tools, operating systems. You can't use a single word if you're going to get 100 for your assignment. Now, out of 20, 25 students, how many of you can, how many of those students do you think can actually do that? Oh, 3, that would be awesome. 3. Yeah, maybe about 3. The good thing is that I teach all my classes this way, and I have prerequisites. So they're actually, in every class, they have 4 to 5 assignments where they have to write, and they're learning along the way because I'm providing them feedback on each of these papers. And so they're learning. So you would think by the end that they're good at it, and usually they are. Usually they are, if they care about their grade and they care about actually doing something. They also have to do a technical analysis. They have to gather and analyze the evidence. Remember, I talked about critical thinking skills. Is that, especially on this one's fairly sophisticated, but there's a lot of places they need to look in the operating system to gather the evidence. And I even go so far as to say, okay, you need to look in these places. So they know where to look, and they know to gather the evidence. But I would say 50% of the students never explain how the evidence relates to the theory of who the intruder was. And I try to tell them, you're trying to tell a story and provide evidence. Remember, this is like a crime scene. And if anybody's watched NCIS or CSI or any of those shows, that's how it works. So you would think, drawing that analogy, is that you're gathering evidence, fingerprints, DNA, computer stuff, and then coming to a conclusion that they would understand that, but they don't. So what are they lacking? Critical thinking skills. And then, as I said, drawing conclusions based on the evidence. And so this is just a 1-paragraph, actually a couple of paragraph management summary of all these things that they've done over 40 hours, and you don't have to read that, but this is a fairly good example of somebody following instructions. And if you can read any of that, there's the sense of realism. They're actually communicating what they've done, what they've learned, who the bad person was, and how they knew that, all in a paragraph, all without using any technical language. And this is what their papers look like. This is cut off at the bottom, but this was 15 pages. And they have to do 4 to 5 of these per class. What's wrong here? Do you all have to take a class in technical writing, students? Any kind of writing? Well, you have to take something, right? You do have to write papers. Okay, so the problem is that one of the prerequisites for getting into our program is you have to take a technical writing course. What do you learn in technical writing? How to write. And they get to my course, and guess what? They don't know how to write, which means I am teaching them how to write, which really doubles my workload, and it shouldn't be. But it kind of says, I don't want to be cynical, but it says something about the state of education. You know, I think ideally, you know, when you have prerequisites for a course is that you should be learning some of these things in earlier courses. So once you get to an upper level course, that I don't have to teach you how to read, write, spell, check your grammar, all those things. You should already know that. So then I can provide you more educational value on the stuff that I'm supposed to be doing. But it doesn't always work that way. Can I ask you something, sir? That you hire some of the students here, right?
We try to, yes.
Okay. Or they come in for internships?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so some of the things, and oh, by the way, a lot of the things I'm saying now about communication skills, analytical thinking, and being professional is not about just these students. These are students everywhere. And I've talked to people, university professors, and people in business and industry all over the nation. And these are the complaints they get. Are you seeing some of these things?
The ability to communicate and communicate effectively is extremely important, because when decisions are made and the ability to communicate them horizontally, vertically, that is critical.
Right.
You have a key moment. You may have crisis or incident management that's occurring. You cannot risk the moment to take and have miscommunication.
Good. Good. And I'm glad we have a business person here.
And we consider that risk.
Yes.
We will not add risk with someone who cannot communicate.
But it's not your job to teach them how to communicate, right? You expect them to be able to communicate coming out of a program.
We would indeed.
Okay. And somehow students are getting through. Thank you. Okay, a second example of a scenario I have is I give the students a couple of files, and I say, what are these? And I set it up with a scenario that somebody from the U.S. Secret Service found these files. They don't know anything about malware analysis, which is obviously untrue, but they're paying you, again, $350 an hour to find out what these files are, how they work, to document that evidence, and provide a couple of cases in the recent literature or in the recent news as to how this type of program works. Okay? And that sounds reasonable, right? And so what do they have to do? Ask them, what are these files? For what purposes are they used? It turns out it's a botnet, a server and a client. And then they're to go through something called a static analysis and a dynamic analysis to document their hypothesis as to the name of this piece of malware. And so the deliverables are a management summary, again, nice, short, and sweet, that includes a few things like the recent instances of this, which the Mirai, botnet would be a very good instance of this, and some legal precedents regarding these types of malware. One paragraph, non-technical language. And then they do a technical peer report that actually demonstrates, and we're talking about forensics, this is in a forensics class, is that they should be able to give that report to another technical person who could then go back and follow that report and gather the same evidence and come to the same conclusion, if that makes any sense. That's the way we do things in forensics. So we usually have a manager report and we have a peer report, and they're totally different. The peer report is technical, the management is not. And these are usually 10 to 15 pages. So what did I see in my students? This was their first assignment for this network forensics and incident response course. So half of them got 100. Fantastic. Because what they did was they did a good job on the management summary. The technical stuff is really easy, but then again, there was a downfall on the 50% that didn't get the 100, because what they were doing was they were documenting what they did without telling me A, why they did it, or B, was this even relevant? So what are they lacking there? Critical thinking. Obviously, critical thinking is very important. Can somebody guess as to why these students aren't really exhibiting critical thinking skills? Isn't that what a university education is all about? It's hard. Critical thinking is difficult. Doesn't your mind sometimes glaze over when you're doing something hard and, requires a great deal of thought? And it's like, I don't want to do this, so I'm just kind of read it and trying to do my best. It's something that's very difficult, but as students, it's very important that you think. And I'm afraid that some of you, I know some of my students, they think they're thinking, but they're not. They want the easy way out. So, strategies for making you employable, mentors. You have these university professors, or if you have an internship, there's somebody who may be able to take you under their wing. Is that they have these skills. And this is either at, in a classroom setting or a research setting, if you're doing any research here in a lab. In fact, up until my current institution, I've always had my own security lab or forensics lab, and I would have grants where I would hire students to come in and work with me, and a lot of them got published. Some of them went to the NSA. So they were doing the right thing. But those were my best students. But you can't expect to kind of walk through life without doing the hard things, like learning to communicate and to think critically and expect to get those types of jobs. Or to be the first person on the list that you say, look at this person. They look good on paper, now let's bring them in. Look how professionally dressed they are. They speak well, they can communicate. That's when you get the job. That's the closer, is being professional, being able to communicate. Personally, I love to mentor students. It makes me feel good. I love students, and in fact, I think, not to toot my own horn, but I think I'm a good mentor because students come by and shoot the breeze with me all the time and ask me questions because I have an open door policy. But each time I do that, I'm actually talking with them and actually trying to teach them just a little bit. That was my story, was about the research labs. Internships. Internships are good because that's the transition from the classroom, the midway transition between the classroom and the real job where you're getting paid $135,000 and my God, now I have a big house and 2 kids and I don't want to fail. And so internships are really good because that's that safe transition period where you may go in from a year, and if you do well, it may turn into something more permanent. And in internships, as in a classroom, for the most part, it's okay to fail in a small way. It's okay. Internships are important because it's a really big jump to the real world. So where do you find internships? Well, you can find them on your own. Faculty members should know of internships. There's lots of different places you can go to find one. But I would highly suggest you do one. But I think here you're required to do one. Is that correct? You're not? Okay. Okay. Oh, it was, okay. I was talking to another faculty and they said that they do require internships. But from what I understand, there's a lot of avenues for internships around here, right? Okay, thanks, Doc. Paid versus unpaid, which would you rather have? Paid? That's good. The expectations for people who have paid internships is going to be higher. So remember that. It's going to be higher. There's nothing in this life you get for free. So you're gonna have to put in more time, effort, energy, be more professional, and being able to communicate better. Finally, be well-rounded. Push yourself. God, this was boring. He didn't talk about ransomware or botnets. I can't believe this. Is he almost done? Yeah, he's almost done. Who wants to talk about communication? I don't want to talk about it. I have to, though, because I've heard of so many stories. In fact, the gentleman I just met earlier, he was talking about the guy. I was thinking I was stealing his thunder because he was talking about being able to communicate, and you hear it all the time. Lack of communication skills. How can you get out of a university without being able to communicate? And it happens. And it happens at my institution. I'm sure it happens at Harvard. Maybe not as much at Harvard, but it happens. Any questions? Yes.
Would you say this lack of the
Oh, yeah, can you wait for the streamers? Are you with me?
So if you have a question, I'd ask that you put your hand up and we'll come around with the mic.
Would you say the continued prevalence of online-only classes could be a contributing factor to the lack of the ability to communicate?
Yes, because my program is online. And so there's certain things that I just can't do. For example, if I were teaching face-to-face, the students would still have to write the reports, but they would also have to get up and, let's say, do something called an elevator speech, is to explain in non-technical language what they did in 30 seconds. There's a lot of disadvantages to online learning, things that you really can't get. But having said that, there are ways around that. For example, Skyping, doing a hangout and having the students do the 30-second reports, but that's pushing a lot more back on the faculty member. And by the way, for you who are faculty members in here? How much time do you spend on teaching versus doing other stuff that's required? Ha ha ha, exactly. Just so you know, is that you think, oh, they spend 90% of their time teaching? No, we don't. There's paperwork, that's stuff to fill out. There's meetings. And so you have to have a happy medium between trying to do the best you can do and giving the student a value for their money. Another question. Yes. Oh. Mike?
I'm a career-changing freshman after a totally different career after 9 years. I'm really gung-ho about getting started, but for someone who's a freshman, maybe even just a sophomore, how far do you recommend that we go as far as mentoring, things like that, or should we kind of just hold off until get more?
No, I'd get a mentor right away.
Perfect.
Because a mentor, that's like saying that you're on a trip and you're kind of winging it, and you're not going to ask directions until you think you're near the end, and it turns out you're 100 miles away. So find your mentor early and let that person guide you from the beginning. And I guarantee there's somebody here at this institution that'd be more than happy to be a mentor, because I know a lot of these guys. Next question.
For those of us that are non-traditional students, already have a career and realize our career is kind of reaching an endpoint and changing, how do you recommend approaching mentoring and internships?
No different.
Couldn't exactly go for an unpaid internship when I currently have a salary.
In terms of internships, that may be a sticking point with somebody who's already working 40 hours a week. You may not be able to do that. The thing about internships is, again, I'm guessing that you're able to communicate already because you've had a nice long career, professional career. So you don't need to worry about that. But in terms of actually learning to apply the skills on the job, that's something you're going to need to do. So you need to set aside maybe a few hours a week to try to do that. But, you know, I'm really glad to hear that people who are in one career are coming back into cyber, because it is doable. I want to thank you so much for listening. Almost everybody stayed awake. Thanks, streamers.
Phil, thank you so much for an excellent opening talk. A lot of really good ideas to bring together, and I couldn't help but notice that you were a paid advertisement for our Knowledge at Work program. As hopefully all of the students know, but as a quick reminder, our Knowledge at Work program is focused specifically on what Philip was talking about, and that's providing opportunities for you to explore and apply your knowledge outside of the classroom. Of course, your professors help you inside the classroom, but we really, really encourage all of you to take advantage of the Knowledge at Work program. And two great examples that you talked about that I'm also a huge fan of. Number one, internships. There's some great internships available. In fact, very often we have more internship opportunities than we do students. So virtually all the students that are interested in internships, we can help you find that. And the second one that I'm equally a big fan of is undergraduate research. This is a great opportunity for you, and you have many professors on our campus that are very, very interested in working with undergraduate students. It not only builds on the knowledge in the classroom, but it also tackles that touchy subject of learning to write or perfecting your writing skills. So highly, highly recommend that. And just one other issue that I thank you for bringing up and reminding our students, you know, when we talk to our advisory board, our Information Technology Advisory Board, and we ask them what they want most from our graduates, it's not the technical skills. Our students have excellent technical skills, but what differentiates one from another are these communication and collaborative skills. That's what employers are really after. So make sure you know the technical piece, but build on the communication and collaboration skills.